think that abstract concepts have a very undetermined meaning. So what is freedom for you? I don't know. What is freedom for me? I don't know. So we should build, maybe we have to build it together. And also when we are adults, so maybe you have a notion of freedom, I have another, and we have to converge on it. We have to find a way to understand each other. And because their meaning is not so clear and well defined as that of concrete concepts, we think that there is this, we need to rely more on others.
Hi, I'm Lorenz. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I interview leading scientists from different fields to provide multi-level, onion-like perspectives on how humans work. And today's guest is Anna Borghi. She's a psychologist with also a background in philosophy. And we'll be talking about language concepts, both concrete concepts and abstract concepts, and her related theory, the words as social tools view. So I think it's really interesting, and I hope you have fun too. So let's go. Okay, Anna Borghi, welcome to the Painting Onions podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Sure. So I would like to start with a very basic question. That is, what is a concept in the study of language?
Okay, thank you so much for this question. So basically in the literature, authors typically distinguish between categories and concepts. So a category, I think of, for example, when you distinguish between praise and predators, you form a category that is that has different exemplars. And the concept would be, so to say, the cognitive aspects would consist of the cognitive aspects linked to this category. So what we think about praise and what we think about predators. So this is what a concept is. And the idea of a concept is that when you think of praise or predators, you reactivate previous experiences you had in relation to this concept. Which are emotional experiences, sensory experiences, bodily experiences, linguistic experiences.
Okay, and I read some articles of yours, and there's often the distinction between concrete concepts and abstract concepts. Could you maybe explain and contrast these two kinds of concepts?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for this question. So we do not think there is a dichotomy between concrete and abstract concepts. Some examples are, an example of a concrete concept, of a very concrete concept, is window or table or bottle. An example of a very abstract concept is freedom or truth or thinking. Even though these are clearly extremely abstract versus extremely concrete concepts, but we don't think at all that there is a dichotomy. Rather, we think that these concepts are arranged in a space characterized by multiple dimensions. So to make an example, what is an abstract concept like freedom, and in what respect it is different from bottle? First of all, freedom is low dimensional. That is, all the elements of freedom have less in common than all the elements of bottle. So it's difficult to find some common elements. So this is called low dimensionality. And also the way in which concrete and abstract concepts refer to the reference, to the objects or to the entities or to the actions is different, because in the case of bottle, we have an object as referent. Whereas in the case of freedom, we do not. We have a variety of experiences, situations, events, etc. And also, typically, concrete concepts are evaluated by people as more as eliciting more images. So it's more easy to imagine them compared to abstract concepts. They are more, we say, grounded in sensory motor experience. So they activate more sensory motor experience. A bottle, we typically act with it, we grasp it, and we think of its color. Whereas in the case of abstract concepts, it's more difficult to think of the color of freedom. Although we might even think of a color of freedom. And also concrete concepts activate more there is a dimension called body-object interaction. So people think that they interact more with concrete concepts. But also abstract concepts have some peculiarities. For example, inner bodily signals are typically more activated with abstract compared than with concrete concepts, and also emotions. And another thing, abstract concepts are typically more complex. Think, for example, of cause. Cause is a concept in which you have an agent, a patient, multiple elements, a combination of multiple elements. So it is more complex. It's not a simple object, so to say. It's relational. And also, if you think of abstract concept, you typically, we found in a variety of studies that people think that in order to understand what they mean, they need more other people. So we need them more. We need others more in order to understand, to grasp what an abstract concept is. And also, a concrete and abstract concept are associated with different kinds of words. For example, in the case of concrete words are more iconic. So there is more relationship between the form of the word and the object. Abstract words are less. And concrete words are acquired typically earlier in children, and abstract concept later. And abstract concepts are typically acquired more through linguistic explanation, and concrete concepts more through perception. So our mother or daddy or someone has indicated to us the referent of the word. So there is this difference. And also, for example, abstract concepts evoke more contexts. So we think of many possible situations where we had an experience of freedom, but they are less linked to a specific context. This is a construct called contextual availability. And also, there are also differences in morphology. For example, in a recent paper shows that, at least in English, count nouns are more often concrete, and mass nouns are more evaluated by people as more often abstract. So there are a bunch of differences between concrete and abstract concepts, but still they are not a dichotomy, because one abstract concept might be very high in emotional character and another might not. So there are differences within these two typologies of concepts.
Okay. One question that I have is, if I understood it correctly, so when I think, for example, of something concrete like a bottle, as you said, when I think of a bottle, is it already enough just by thinking of it to activate some of the motor, I don't know, nerves or neurons that are typically in play when I really actually reach out for a bottle, for example, or my mouth, because I might drink from a bottle? Is it actually going on like in, I don't know, brain data imaging or something?
Okay, so we think that that is certainly part of the story. That is not part of this. That is not the whole story. Because also in the case of bottle, you can activate emotional experiences. I don't know. You can evoke not only sensory motor experiences. You can evoke also interoceptive experiences. If you think of drinking from a bottle and what happens in your body, etc. So you might activate a variety of experiences also with concrete concepts. So I don't want to say that we exhaust our experience of concrete concepts with sensory motor experience. There are certainly many other components. The distinction between concrete and abstract overall and within their subkinds is more a matter of grade, of levels, of weight, so to say.
Yeah. Okay, but also are there also other kind of concepts, if we say if we have this dimension of concrete and abstract? I mean, you also said multidimensionality, but is there also like some concepts that are similar, like concrete concept and then X, or is it really concrete and abstract the most concrete or most central dichotomy, or you know what I mean? Yeah, dimensionality.
Yeah. No, we think that we really think that there are many subkinds of concepts, of concrete and of abstract concepts. And I think that this is really an important acquisition of the literature of the last 10 years, because for many years, people have studied distinctions within concrete concepts. For example, there is a classical distinction between living versus non-living objects, or natural objects versus artifacts. Like tools are represented in some parts of the brain, and natural objects are represented in other parts of the brain. So natural objects are evoke more visual experiences, tools more motor experiences, so to say. And there is a tradition of studies in this field, in this area, also concepts like food, etc. Whereas in the case of abstract concepts, people for a long time have considered them as a unitary category, whereas they are not. So there are many distinctions. For example, emotional concepts, which are more abstract than concrete ones, evoke a lot of emotional experiences, inner bodily experiences, etc. Bodily experiences overall. Whereas think of a philosophical concept like, I don't know, philosophy or logic. They do not evoke these kinds of experiences, but maybe they evoke more linguistic experiences, situations, events, etc. And so we think that there are some subkinds. We created an Italian database, and we identified some of these subkinds, at least for Italian people. There might be obviously a lot of cultural differences within. So we identified these more emotional concepts, abstract concepts more related to magnitude, like numbers, spatial concepts, temporal concepts, or quantitative concepts, so to say, which are distinguished from philosophical concepts, philosophical and spiritual, like religion, philosophy, truth, and from other concepts which refer more to the relationship between people, like kindness. So some call them theory of mind concepts. We call them self and sociality. So, but concepts that refer to social aspects, interactive aspects, and that might have also emotional connotations. So what we think is that there are different kinds of concepts, and that it is important to understand the dimensions that characterize them, and that this dimension might differ, as I said.
Yeah. But interesting that abstract concepts are so diverse, because you typically, if you don't really think about it that hard, don't think of abstract, at least I didn't, of abstract concepts as so diverse, and as you also said, like emotions, but also numbers and all these different kinds of concepts.
Right.
Could you maybe give an example of one concept that's really, like, so to speak, in between concrete and abstract, so that has really a lot of concreteness but also a lot of abstractness, maybe? And can you think of one?
So emotional concepts are typically evaluated more or less in the middle, more on the side of abstract concepts, but they are, for some tasks, we found that they have the same performance of concrete concepts. And so they are really in the middle. And there is also some people who propose that for children, they might help in learning more abstract concepts. So emotional concepts like love or affection might be the first words, the first concept you learn that do not have an object as referent. They have an internal experience, an internal state. And so they can learn, they can help you acquire more complex abstract concepts like truth and philosophy. So you might learn that there are concepts that do not have an object as a reference. And so emotional concepts are really in between, I would say.
Yeah, okay. I also thought about maybe I got it wrong, money, for example, that because money, it has like this material, like paper, for example, but then again, it's just made up from humans, just the idea of money and what you can do with it. So is that also an example, or not?
I think that's a great example. Okay. In this respect, I would a little bit distinguish. So sometimes we use ratings to assess abstractness and concreteness of people. If you present money, you wouldn't get, you would get ratings according to which money is quite concrete, But I think you're totally right that it is not, because money evokes also a lot of exchanges, situations in which, so it's not just, it can evoke a physical object on one side, but also a lot of interactions and exchanges, etc. And this is really a good example of the fact that there is no dichotomy. So that also a concept that apparently is concrete might evoke other abstract experiences. And that depending on the context, you might activate some sort of experiences or other sort of experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Would you say that as a rule of thumb, the more abstract the word is, the more subjective and variable its meaning? I think you also alluded to it already. But yeah, I was also wondering about emotions, for example, but also concepts like freedom or like happiness. I mean, it seems like in a way for each person it could be just a different meaning. Would you agree with that, or?
I would totally, I would agree. I don't know whether it is really a linear relationship. I'm not sure about that, but in general, we also propose that, for example, that abstract concepts are more variable across contexts, but also variable across languages, for example. We think that, and I think there is evidence showing that, for example, there are a lot of variability across languages in concepts like that of time, which is quite abstract, compared to concepts like that of container, which is more concrete. So, so the idea would be really, I would totally agree with the idea that more abstract concepts are more variable, both also within participants. So let's say we describe what we think of freedom now, and what we think of freedom in 2 days. Maybe we have totally updated the meaning of the concept and changed it. Whereas, and across people, so for you and for me, it might be quite different. Whereas for the notion of bottle, if we belong to the same culture, then there wouldn't be so many, there would be more convergence.
Yeah,
and we are actually studying this. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You're studying it? What do you mean?
No, we are actually studying this. We are doing some online study in which we want to see, for example, how people converge in defining, for example, a concrete versus an abstract concept. And it seems preliminary results show that people take much longer to converge on an abstract concept because they are more variable across participants.
Yeah, but also, as you said, that's where I was smiling with the within people, because I thought, like, when I was, I don't know, 17 or 18 years old, freedom for me, for example, would be like smoking a cigarette or something. And today I have a whole nother concept of freedom, for example. It's funny. Okay, and I also think, yeah, it makes sense what you said with it's not like a linear like correlation, so to speak. Because, for example, I think also like numerical, like numbers or so, they appear to be pretty much the same, maybe at least compared to other concepts which are more like personal, for example. Okay, did you know? Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, if I can say something, numbers are a very special abstract concept, we think, because they are they differ in many respects from other abstract concepts because they seem to refer to an element, which is not always the same. So, for example, if I say one, it refers to bottles, to I don't know, to pens, to pencils, etc. So it's they are quite different from the others. And indeed, there are some studies showing that they evoke, for example, more the hand than the mouth, whereas the mouth is activated in the case of abstract concepts. So they are a little bit different.
Oh, okay, interesting case. Okay, do you know when abstract concepts evolved, like in human evolution? Because it seems obvious that at first, if we had human language, we had languages for, I don't know, something to eat or something, but some concrete ones. And do you know, is there any, have there been studies who like know when this came up? And because it's a hallmark of human intelligence, I would say.
Yeah. So I don't know if there is, to my knowledge, there is not much on evolution. There is a lot on development. So a lot, not a lot, but there are some studies on development showing that they emerge later in children. So from an ontogenic perspective, but from a phylogenetic perspective, there is not much. As far as I know, there are some studies on with culturomics approaches. So studies that investigate big corpora, in which they investigated the evolution of abstract concept, but within a given time slot. For example, there are some studies quite recent, for example, a study by Snefiella and collaborators showing that from 18th century and 1800, and 2000, there has been an evolution towards concreteness, especially motivated, for example, by the presence in the English language, especially motivated, for example, by the presence of a lot of migrant people, so multicultural cultures, typically multicultural groups typically evolve toward concreteness. But as far as I know, there is not much on evolution, while it would be totally interesting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, for example, I thought also of the creation of number, or like the concept of numbers. And then in history, I learned something that like, it's probably just totally wrong, but like 2000, no, 3000 or probably even longer ago, when they had the first signs and evidence of those plates where they were just cutting like lines to count something. And I mean, then they would have to have, at least at that point, the abstract concept of numbers, for example. But yeah,
right.
I mean, when the first concept, abstract concept appeared, is probably just out of reach for for history.
Right.
Okay.
There are some comparative studies, for example, studies on other animals showing that when they grasp the concept of same and different, but just very, very simple abstract concept like same and different. Whereas my sense is that because at least I think that for abstract concept, language is fundamental, and so my sense is that developing abstract concept might have required also sophisticated linguistic abilities.
Yeah. Okay. So you also said in one article there might be conceptual representations that do not have a corresponding word. Could you elaborate on that? And then also maybe related to that, explain how babies who don't have words yet create and use concepts in general.
Okay. So I think that's really a difficult question, because I think it pertains the role language might have in influencing our concept. So this is what I think. I think that we are a linguistic species, so there is the possibility that language influences also pre-linguistic children. But there is certainly evidence with pre-linguistic children showing that they form categories, even if they don't have a corresponding label. So basically, the idea that we have, that I and my colleagues have, is that we first have sensory motor experiences, and we move in the world. And when a child, an infant, moves in the world, he or she focuses attention on some elements that might be perceptually salient, that might be perceptually particularly relevant, etc. And then starts to understand that there are elements that share some similarities. So I focus my attention, I don't know, on this object because it is blue. It is very salient. And then I start to categorize, put it together with other objects that have a similar shape or a similar color that are perceptually salient as this. This is the idea. And then language would come and help children to understand what is this. This is a glass case, I don't know, or to understand what an object is. Whereas in the case of abstract concept, we think that the process might be a little bit different. So I think that there exists category that do not still have a corresponding word. But it's clear that once you get the word, once somebody tells you this is a table or this is a bottle, then your category becomes much more compact and with clearer boundaries, so you can distinguish table from, I don't know, from chairs or from other elements that might have similar functions in some respect, etc. So this is basically the idea that there might be experiences that are not yet linguistic, and language can scaffold, can help you to refine this knowledge.
Yeah, makes sense. So then, like babies, I'm just imagining being a baby, and then I see those two blue things, and then I put them together, and then I don't have a word, obviously, but I just know that this is something together, and then this is like the concept that I have without like the word. Okay. Yeah, but really interesting.
So it's basically a form of associative learning also. So you learn to associate a given word with a given experience. And so through associations, you start to understand what a bottle is. You start it before probably, but then you associate it with a word, and so the concept become clearer.
Yeah.
This is what we think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also makes sense, like you said, with the scaffolding, that once we have this word, then later in life as a concept, you can, or you start to see things that you can explain by this word, or like that you can put in the box of this word, for example, of this concept.
Yeah.
Which also like just shows the function of language and concepts.
Yeah.
Okay. So when do children actually start learning and also using then more abstract concepts? You already said that it has to do a lot with linguistic experiences, or also like teaching, for example. Yeah, and I know that you have done some research on that. Is there like a Jean Piaget who said, like, when you are this old you can get you start to have abstract concepts, or is it more like a wider range in the age of the children?
Yeah. I think that there is some variability. Certainly, there are some studies showing that even infants might develop the ability to comprehend, not to use abstract notions. So infants like 10 months old or 14 months old, there is some evidence showing this, that infants of this age are able to understand words like all gone or something like that. At least they react differently when their mothers use these words. And interestingly, this has been associated by some authors with the development of the social ability to follow the gaze of others and to perform joint actions with others, etc. So it has been associated with the ability to comprehend abstract concepts might be related with the development of some social ability. So there is some variability in the acquisition of abstract concepts, and it depends a lot on what you intend with abstract concepts. It's obvious that if we intend concepts like the one I mentioned before, like philosophy or logic, they are learned quite late. And there is an increase in the ability to use them around from 5 to 8 years and also later. But there are other abstract concepts, very simple, that can be used also earlier. So for example, we recently performed a study in which we analyzed the interaction of infants and their mothers in the first 2 years of life. And we found the emergence of interesting abstract words. Obviously not words like freedom, as I said, but the first numerical words, for example, or first pronouns that can be considered as more abstract than, for example, nouns or elements referring to these two objects children see.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good. So, and now we are turning more towards your words as social tools theory. So, and you also here again alluded to it already, but could you maybe go a little bit more into, so I'm citing you now here. So concepts are grounded in perceptual and motor systems, and words are not arbitrarily linked to their reference, but point to them. Could you maybe elaborate on this a little bit more, like what this actually means? Yeah.
So what is, I think that we think is that words can refer to the objects or entities they express. For example, if I hear the word bottle, I reactivate previous experiences related to that word. And this is what a lot of theories say. So it's all theories adopting an embodied or grounded approach, basically proposed this. And I think one of the first ones, and first and most prominent ones, was the theory of Larry Barcelou on concepts, so on concepts and words. So words refer to their elements. So what we propose with the words as social tools theory is that words are that, certainly that. So they refer to the reference, but they are not only that. So that they are also tools. So they are also tools that help us to modify what happens between us and the person who's speaking with us. So we are able to convince him or to, I don't know, to talk with him, to explain with him or with her, etc. That they are also, and they are also inner tools, that is, they modify our own experience. So if I speak to myself, I can improve the way I perform a series of activities. For example, I can improve a motor activity, talking to myself. I can learn, if I have to learn to dance, for example. I can improve a varieties of activities. I can re-explain to me what's going on. I can motivate myself. So we think that words, and I can also improve perception. For example, if someone says to me, or if I say to myself, yellow, and I see, or a tree, and I see something which is not clearly distinguished, but here the word tree helps me to understand what it is. So basically the idea is that words also enhance perception and enhance our manipulation ability, enhance our ability to interact with the surrounding world. So in this respect, words are both elements that point to the reference, but they are not only that. They are also social tools. They are also inner tools. And they are also, I say, maybe the expression is not perfect, but physical tools, so that they help us to, they contribute to our perception. So it's not always the case that perception comes first and words come later, but words can influence and strongly impact our way to perceive the world.
Yeah, and here I also think of because I'm becoming a CBT psychotherapist for children and adolescents, there's this technique of reframing. I don't know if you know it. So that just by reframing, I don't have an example here, but just by using different words to explain something, a situation or something, an experience, you start to actually perceive the world differently. And stuff like that. And it's really helpful for patients sometimes, especially if they have like another extreme, like a negative view of the world and of themselves and so on. And that's really a basic and important technique in a way. And that makes sense that, as you said,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's also shaping perception. Are there maybe interesting empirical findings that are typical for explaining or showing that what you propose with your words as social tools theory, that are just backing this up? Your new points, so to speak.
Yeah, let me say a few words on words as social tools, because I simply outline the framework where we move.
Yeah.
So basically, what we propose in the case of abstract concepts is that with words as social tools theory is that the linguistic and social dimension is fundamental.
Right.
So not only sensory motor aspects, but also the linguistic and social dimension. And that it is important to study not only how abstract concepts are represented in the brain and how people represent them, but also their acquisition. Because if we grasp it, then we can understand really what's going on. And so in the last years, there are many theories outlining, highlighting the importance of multiple aspects in the case of abstract concepts. I think that the what theory focuses mostly on the social aspects. So basically, it proposes that when we acquire abstract concepts, we really need others. We need others because they have to explain to us the meaning of the words, and because we really cannot arrive on our own to the meaning of the abstract words. So the others are totally important for the acquisition, and we think they are important also later. So also during the processing. Why? Because we think that abstract concepts have a very undetermined meaning. So what is freedom for you? I don't know. What is freedom for me? I don't know. So we should build, maybe we have to build it together. And also when we are adults, so maybe you have a notion of freedom, I have another, and we have to converge on it. We have to find a way to understand each other. And because their meaning is not so clear and well defined as that of concrete concepts, we think that there is this, we need to rely more on others. And so to co-build the meaning of the words with others. An example, I don't know, scientists who have to define the notion of representation. That's a possible example. But there is also another case. So suppose that I know what representation is, but I don't know which is your version of representation. So I need to understand it better. Whereas I can assume that I know what you think about all these. And so really we focused a lot in the last years on the role of language and the role of sociality. And there are, as I said, many other theories that consider the role of language. For example, there is one theory which is very close to ours, which is lens by Gaidar, the lens theory, language as a neuro enhancement, which is very close. So he also claims that language transforms our cognition, and it represents a powerful means to improve our knowledge, in particular in the abstract domain. Our is different only for this stress on acquisition, for this stress on social aspects, and also we also stress a lot the importance of inner speech. So we might use language also to better understand through inner speech, which is the evidence. So far we performed a lot of experiments, mainly behavioral experiments. And we consistently find that when we acquire and process abstract concepts, we activate the mouth motor system. And we think this is a proxy for showing for language acquisition. So we think that the activation of the mouth compared to the hand when we process abstract concepts testifies that language might be more important for abstract than for concrete concepts. We found this activation of the mouth in a variety of experiments. I don't know whether you want me to describe them, the task or something like that. Probably not. So it's more, I don't know.
Sure, you can if it's explainable in a few sentences, you can sure go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, it's so we have a lot of behavioral tasks, like tasks in which you had to rate the words, rate how much the mouth is involved in the words. We had tasks in which participants had to respond, to categorize words and to respond, for example, using the microphone or using a device to press into the mouth. So to use the mouth instead of pressing a button with a hand or something like that. And we always found this activation of the mouth. We also have some studies with children with a pacifier showing that children who use the pacifier for longer time are a little bit slower in processing abstract concepts compared to other concepts. And so it seems that the mouth is really important for abstract concepts. And so we have a bunch of evidence on this. Evidence like this has always been found, has also been found in other labs, not only in our lab, but we have really a lot. And also in the last years, what we're trying to do is to try to see whether abstract concepts evoke more interaction. And so we have some recent evidence, for example, kinematics evidence or evidence showing that when we have a conversation on abstract concepts, we tend to be more uncertain on one side on the meaning. So to say more, I think that, things like that. And at the same time to ask more to the other what he or she means. And so we think that, and we are doing a lot of studies in this respect and are currently doing and planning further studies in order to investigate the social dimension in abstract concepts.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have one question about the pacifier use of babies. So when they used the pacifier for a longer time, and then you said they have more difficulties acquiring or understanding abstract concepts, is that then also at that time when they're still using the pacifier, or is it even like 10 years later or something?
Okay, that's a good point. Years later. So we have, so far we have published 2 studies on this, showing that children who are 6 years old or 8 years old are very good with abstract concepts. So it's not, we don't want to say people should not use the pacifier. That's not, we cannot say it on the basis of this evidence. But what we can say is that children who use the pacifier beyond the age of 3, when they are 6, they have a slightly different way to define abstract concepts compared to other children. That is, the boundaries between abstract concepts and other concepts is less defined. They use less experiential words to refer to them. And we have evidence showing that children who have used pacifier for a long time, when they are 8, and they have to respond whether a word is that of an animal or not. So they have simply to process the word of an abstract concept. They are slower, significantly slower, but it's a matter of few milliseconds. So it's it's nothing impacting the cognitive abilities of children or something like that. We just wanted to test whether having something in the mouth very often might modify the way we acquire abstract concepts.
Okay, and then the idea is that having the pacifier in your mouth, it's like interfering with like learning, because you then normally have to use your mouth in a way to get the ideas. And okay. Are there other or in general practical implications of this new view of the what theory, for example, for teaching or educating children? Or I mean, with the pacifier there's this small implication maybe, but as you said, it's not a huge difference probably, but still, are there any implications?
Yeah, I think it puts a lot of emphasis on the learning process. So and so on how to teach children to acquire elements, so to acquire new abstract elements. So help them through language, a lot through language, help them providing a lot of examples, help them providing multidimensional situations and multidimensional experiences. So this,
yeah,
one way to, and also we think that the fact that there is this preferential association between abstract concept and sociality, puts a lot of emphasis on the role of social interaction also for learning abstraction. So take care of social interaction. So
yeah. And I mean, with all this digital media stuff, I also think it's another argument for like really learning, like with real people and interacting with real people and real gestures and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Okay. I have this general question. Would you say that because both concrete but also abstract, especially abstract concepts, are useful, would you say that the more words somebody knows and really is like professional in using them in the right contexts and so on, the better the person actually understands the world and themselves? So would you like advocate for learning words and language and concepts is like really important for understanding the world, and then also like, of course, going through the world and doing things, because everything you do kind of has to be explained in words, so to speak? Would you say that's the case? Or yeah, I mean, it's probably just a rhetorical question, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that language is a very important form of experience. So I think that if we are proficient, that will certainly help us in a variety of situations. So, but I don't think that language is the only form of experience. So I started from an embodied perspective. So I think that bodily experiences, sensorial experiences, etc., are also totally crucial. So, but I think that, and we have also some, there is also some evidence from our group and from other groups showing that children who learn early, for example, some abstract words, are facilitated in learning language. So language can be can open new ways of learning. So I think it's important.
And would you also say, for example, that since abstract words are so important in a way, that schools should teach them earlier, or is it actually going on quite well in schools that they teach abstract words? Or would you, for example, say that even children should be taught philosophy or something where they are dealing with abstract concepts in a very sophisticated way? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've never thought about that, but I think it would be important to learn a lot of abstract concepts, but the best way to learn abstract concepts is to learn them through examples and referring to more concrete situations. So there is evidence on this showing that it's easier for us to ground them. So I think it will be important to use a lot of examples and concrete elements, but at the same time not to be scared of letting children learn sophisticated and complex elements.
Yeah.
So I think we should find ways to have them acquire complex elements through simple elements. But yes.
Yeah, I see. Okay. I don't know if you have children, but if you have any, has
Yes.
your whole research on language and acquisition and all that influenced the way you like educated or talk to your children in a way?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the most difficult question. I don't know. Yeah, certainly yes, because we are our experience. So certainly my work experience has influenced my how I am with them. what I think is very important for them is to have multiple experiences. And I think that, for example, the experiences, the nature, and having a lot of sensorial experiences, having a lot of linguistic experiences is important. So this is what I try to do with them, but I don't know.
Yeah, I see, and it makes sense.
Yeah,
and
you never know whether that's the right way. So,
yeah, of course.
But certainly, yeah. But certainly your work has an impact on how you.
And I mean, what I like also about your approach is this embodied view, and you emphasize that it really is not like language is not the only thing, so to speak. And as you said, the whole sensory motor experiences and learning, and also it's nice that in your theory you can connect all those together and also tie it back. For example, I read that you tie it back to Bayesian approaches, for example, to the brain and all this. So your theory, what I like about it is just not like restricted just to language and words, but also connecting it back to all kinds of scientific evidence. I like that a lot. Yeah. Okay, no, so
and one aspect that maybe I haven't underlined before is that with language, so there are, for example, distributional theories of language are very important in my view, and they claim that we understand the meaning of language through association with other words. So you grasp the meaning of glass by associating it with the meaning of other words. I think that's very important, but I think that language is something more. And this is the reason why we stress a lot the importance of interactive methods in the last years. We try to work on that because language is really a social experience, an interactive experience, etc. I know I'm saying something trivial, but I think that for too many years we have intended language simply as without capturing its richness, which is not only word associations, which is really an experience which interacts with all the other experiences we have.
I think you are absolutely right. It makes a lot of sense, but of course I don't know how the all these researchers who are, for example, voting, so to speak, for the traditional view would now respond to that. But for me, it certainly makes sense, as you say. Okay, so I always end these questions with this podcast with two questions. The first one is, what are your 3 favorite hobbies?
Okay. So one is, I like reading novels. Nothing to do with work, so novels. I like singing.
So you sing for yourself, or
I sang. I don't know any music, I must say, so I'm not proficient in music, but I sing. So I sang in a choir or something like that, but not professional. So I like singing, and I also like swimming and skiing, cross-country skiing, so sports. So but not all sports. So swimming, I like it a lot. That's my favorite. But also skiing in the mountains, going cross-country, and also normal skiing.
Cool.
I said 4, so it's...
No, it's fine. It's just 1. It's sports. Okay.
Yeah, I said sport.
Yeah. And the last question is, if you would wake up tomorrow and find yourself back at age 18, having just graduated from high school, what would you do with your life?
Yeah, that's also a tough question. So I would say, it would be good to try all the other things that one hasn't done. So I don't know, one could be sing more, start singing or something like that. Or you mean another profession, right? Another kind of...
Could be all kinds. So singing would be then, of course, more like the hobby, but also professional. Would you also again study philosophy or psychology or something else, or?
Yes, I would like to... Oh no, there are a lot of things that I would like to do. So to write more, write novels, not scientific stuff. So that's something I always liked. I do it for hobby, but maybe dedicate more time to that. And also maybe if I had to start again, I would be more, I would try to have a better math background. So I would like to be more proficient in that area. And also, but I really think that being a scientist is really an exciting job. So I think that could be in a different way or in a different area. I don't know, but I think it's very nice. So I like it. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I also have the same feeling about mathematics. I also would have wanted to be more proficient in that. Do you actually need mathematics in your theory or in your scientific research right now a lot, or is it rather?
A lot of statistics. We use a lot of statistics, and I would like to be more proficient in that. We use sometimes we use computational models. So yeah.
Okay.
But
I mean, there's just one life, and I think it's really interesting what you do. And as you said, you like to be a scientist, and you also get to write novels, even if it's just for a hobby. So that's cool. Okay, so thank you a lot for your time. I had fun, and I hope you too. And
I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much.